Kayla's supposed to come one day this week and help me, with some of my paperwork. I haven't yet to get a work study student. Vehicles equipped with a manual transmissions have a clutch safety switch. This is Automotive Electronics Test 6. Yeah, you're right. Some of them. Actually, if it's the law that they're supposed to have if they're newer than a certain year model.
I had an 86 Toyota Celica, and you can crank it up and start moving.
Yeah. Well,
you got one?
I have one.
You have one? What'd you do with it?
It's flat in China.
Well, sure. Yeah. 86 Toyota Celica. Well, you got his attention with that, didn't you? There should be a 2-minute wait between cranking attempts. Is that true or false? Should there be a 2-minute crank between cranking attempts? They say that, but does anybody abide by that?
No.
Heck, no. Starters are pretty doggone tough.
Yeah, they are.
Something that'll destroy a starter quicker than just about anything else? Trying to consistently start the car with low voltage. If you've got a battery that's kind of weak and you keep trying to start it going run like that, you'll eventually destroy that starter because of that low voltage. I mean, low voltage will kill a starter dead as a hammer. Number 3, a starter should draw less current once it is spinning.
That's true.
Did you know that's true with just about every electrical load out there? Why is that?
Takes less to
A
maintain
light
it.
bulb. If you turn on a light bulb, if you've got a scope hooked to your light bulb, you're going to see it spike up and then level out. If you turn on an electric motor, a fan or something, the current required to get that fan started to spin is going to spike up. If you open a fuel injector, the current required to open that injector is going to spike up and then level off. Always the way it works.
Hey, isn't Euros the little E thing?
Huh?
Isn't a Euro the little E? The symbol for Euro is the E?
Yeah, like an E with a dash through it or something.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. All right. You trying to buy a Celica or something? All right. Number 4, the 2 windings in a solenoid are pull-in and hold-in. That's true. There's a pull-in winding and a hold-in winding in a starter. This is only important to you if you're going to be a starter builder. You know what I mean?
There ain't no sense in doing it, anything.
Yeah. Well, you can get parts to build them. There's shops that still build starters. There's one in Enterprise that build any starter you throw at them.
I rebuilt the one on my door.
Over across from the,
I rebuilt the one on my door.
Yeah, you can do that. Do you know the starter? I've got an F525 John Deere lawnmower. It's got a 12.5 horse Kawasaki engine on it. And the starter, sometimes they go click, 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 and they'll spin. And, everything's fine with connections, but the starter's starting to give a little bit of trouble. And I went and priced a starter for that doggone thing. And that little lawnmower starter for that John Deere starter is $600.
Yeah.
And that little starter so little you can hold it in your hand. That's
Still
absolutely
make you
ridiculous.
keep it?
Huh?
Still make you keep it?
Pretty much. I would.
Well, the lawnmower is really a nice lawnmower. It's like a $5,000 lawnmower new. You know what I mean? And it still runs just like brand new.
That's going to be a
Think better.
$600
Yeah, zero
lawnmower.
Yeah, I
You can
know.
run with it.
Well, I've used some. I probably will pull that thing off and see if I can find some parts for it. But anyway, number 5, a neutral safety switch will have continuity through it when the transmission is in drive or reverse. That means it will carry power, right? Do I have brain dead students? Will your car start in drive or reverse?
No.
Unless it's really wrong.
That is false, okay? What I've got is people want me to spoon feed them the answer. We have to, I'll tell you what we'll probably have to do is we'll have to let some of the students actually teach the class so they'll have to think. You know what I'm saying? You ever do that? When you teach the class, you understand it better than you do when you're just listening. Ain't that right? You absorb 11% of what I say, but I absorb 88% of what I say. If you have to teach it, that's why Chelsea understands an impact wrench now better than she ever did because she took one apart and went and showed it in speech class. All right, 6, the ring gear of a flywheel are badly worn in various spots. Technician A says this could cause poor drive gear engagement. Of course it could. Technician B says this could cause lower than normal starter current draw. Who's right about that?
I don't know about current draw, but I know.
Yeah, that's actually A.
Well,
How many of you guys knew that most of the time when most engines stop, they usually stop in one place, the same place, or in one of 2 places? That's why if you got one that's got chewed up flywheel teeth, you'll usually see it only on one spot because it usually stops within a few degrees of that same place on the flywheel.
How does it do that?
Well, there's one place on the engine that's got slightly more resistance than anywhere else on just about every engine because of compression factors and all that kind of stuff. That's my take on it. I learned that when I was working at a filling station in 1975. The guy that I was working for was pretty sharp. He told me that. What should be done to the system when a 0.7 of a volt drop is observed between the battery positive terminal and the starter solenoid with the engine cranking? What should be done when a 0.7 of a volt? What's the maximum you're allowed on the positive side for voltage drop?
5
Half a volt.
D.
Half a volt. On the ground side, you're allowed 1/10 of a volt. Okay, so with that as the background, we're basically going to, number 7 is C. We're going to replace the cable or component between the voltmeter leads, or clean it. All of the following could prevent a starter solenoid from engaging except, all right, that's number 8. Number 8.
C.
All right.
The other note that Richard never says.
All right.
He don't.
All of the following could prevent a starter solenoid from engaging except what? An open in the neutral safety switch, a shorted clutch safety switch, a bent armature shaft, or an open ignition switch. What does it mean whenever the switch is shorted? That means it'll start in gear, won't it? That means it'll start in gear and it'll run out from under you. All right. Number 9. A vehicle being checked for a no crank is being checked for a no crank condition. A voltmeter placed across the contacts in the starter solenoid indicates 12 volts when the ignition is turned to the start position. A distinct click noise is heard coming from the solenoid at the same time. Technician A says the starter motor may have an open armature or field current, and Technician B says the starter solenoid needs to be replaced. Now think about what we're talking about here. That's number 9. Okay, so you're trying to, it won't crank. Basically, your customer says it just clicks. So you're going to put your voltmeter across the contacts of the starter solenoid, right? Let's look at this. We got to make sure that we understand what we're talking about. Let's just say this is that Bronco out there. Now on the Bronco, the starter has just got one big post on it, and this goes down there, and this comes from the battery, right? B plus. And this comes through the safety neutral switch, which will be closed when you're in neutral, to the starter, like that.
You should get a screwdriver between there.
You can actually run a screwdriver between there and spin them over, that's right. But if I took my voltmeter and I hooked it up right here, all right, and I go click, listen to me, I go click, and I see 12 volts right here. The starter does not spin when I see 12 volts right here. What do I know? Now the solenoid's bad. Why is the solenoid bad? Because we're dropping every bit of the voltage right there. That's the voltage drop. We're dropping voltage right there. That's what you got. So that's how that worked. Now that was a quick and easy way to draw that, but you could just as easily check that. Look at here. These starters, it's made like this with a solenoid here, and the body of the starter is down here. They got this little strap going down into the starter, and they got a battery terminal coming in here, and then you got a little terminal here that says S, and then you got another one over here that says I. This one here gets hot when you turn it into start position. That ain't usually hooked up to anything unless you've got an old car with a ballast resistor on it and all that. This one here that says S is going to be the one that when you put power in, this goes together. If I put my voltmeter here and I read 12 volts there and this clicks and that starter don't work, then I've got a voltage drop right there in that solenoid. Same deal. All right, you understand that? This stuff is really fairly simple stuff. If you hadn't had any exposure to it, it may seem confusing. Number 10, an overrunning clutch protects the armature from what? What is an overrunning clutch?
Overrunning clutch?
Yeah. How many of you know that you can take a starter and you can turn, when you try to turn the gear one way,
Oh yeah, it won't go back up.
it won't go, it'll go real easy one way, but it won't go the other way. All right, now,
Ratchet?
huh?
Kind of like a ratchet.
Yes, exactly. It's like a ratchet, but it's got. And so also, what about the one on a Briggs and Stratton lawnmower engine? when you pull the cord, it's, it turns the motor, but whenever the engine starts up, it stops holding. I mean, that's an overrunning clutch, but it's got little balls in there. Now, what the deal is on that is the overrunning clutch lets have you ever heard one whenever somebody was still holding the starter after the engine starts up, it makes a lot of rattling noises down in there? That overrunning clutch is just raising Cain. I mean, it's kind of made to take that for a little bit. It would destroy it if you kept that up,
It and the flywheel.
Yeah, but it's actually the flywheel's taking that. Usually the gear ratio between, this is sort of a general rule, but the gear ratio between the starter gear and the flywheel is 14-1. So you got 14 and many times as many teeth on a flywheel, generally speaking. It may be slightly.
As you do on the starter?
As you do on a starter. That's the gear ratio. See, the starter's got to have, it's got to be able to turn that big old motor, so you put this great big flywheel in a little bitty starter gear. All right. That's number 10. The overrunning clutch keeps the armature from spinning too fast. That's basically what that does. All right. We'll be through these in a minute. You shall not surely die.
So what was it?
Huh? It keeps it from turning too fast. That's B. Which of the following statements is true of solenoids? They use the electromagnetic field of a coil to pull a plunger back into the coil. That's number 11. They are generally used to engage the starter motor with the engine flywheel. They operate with a movable plunger and usually do a mechanical job. All of the above. Now, whenever you've got a core in a coil of wire, it strengthens the field. That's why these ignition coils are, I've got this laminated core, it makes them stronger. The overrunning clutch accomplishes which of the following? Separates the starter motor from the flywheel, brings the starter motor into contact with the flywheel, protects the starter motor from spinning too rapidly, and that's a D, all of them. The starting safety switch is also called a number 13. That's a neutral start switch. Technician B says a full battery test series should be done before testing the starting system. What we were talking about the other day, we had some situation going on out here. It might have been whenever Zach was talking about checking his. I says, you need to make sure before you do anything, and this is the way it is all the way around. You need to make sure before you do anything else that you have a good, strong battery, because if you don't, everything else you're doing is probably going to be, you'll get skewed results. So make doggone sure you got a good, strong battery. In ignition systems, years ago, when I was working on these cars that had one coil and a distributor cap and all that, the first thing I wanted to know, if I had one that wasn't running right, was how strong is the spark? If the spark is weak and yellow, I'm going to fix it where I've got a good, strong, lightning hot spark, you see. So the core of that system needs to be, everything's kind of built around the battery, So make sure that the battery's good and strong always. Let's see. Neutral start switch, that's number 13 is C, and number 14. Technician A says a full battery test series should be done before testing the start system. Technician B says internal condition of the engine has little effect on the operation of the starting system. Wrong. A is the right guy on that. What I tell you guys that are building engines out here, and I think I probably told Chelsea that when she was building that one last semester too, every time you put a rod cap on, you tighten your main caps first on your crankshaft, right, before anything to it. You're going to turn it through and see if it turns for you.
I've had that problem before.
Yeah, because what happens is you'll get real exuberant and you'll put all of those main caps on, and it ought to turn real smooth, real easy.
I put the girdle on burner.
Yeah. If it do that, it'll lock it down. But and if you every time you put put another rod around one of those journals, you need to turn it through and make sure it turns through easy. Now, it's going to gain a little bit of resistance as you add components to that system. But at the same time, whenever you're done, it ought to turn through nice and smooth. Even at the factory, when they build an engine, they have a turning torque test that they do when they get it assembled with all of the rotating components in there together. Okay, now then, that's number 15. Technician A says the neutral safety switch can apply ground to the starter relay. Can it?
Yep.
All right. Technician B says the neutral safety switch can also control the backup lights on a vehicle.
I know if you do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's part of the deal. You got a neutral on the side of the transmission, neutral safety switch, got like wires coming out of it. Also tell the computer what gear you're in and all that stuff. It all does the same job. I tell you what happened one time back in probably 30 years ago. I was working on a Ford pickup truck. And fortunately, I was in a very large shop. Now, there were other cars in there, but I was in a large shop. And the best way I can maybe keep you guys out of trouble is to tell you about the stupid mistakes that I made. I pulled one in that was a 71 Ford pickup truck. And the complaint was the backup lights didn't work. That was a fairly simple fix, right? And so I checked the fuse and it was good. And I said, well, I wonder if it's got a bad neutral safety switch on the side of the transmission. So I have the hood open on the truck. Well, I had dropped it in reverse. I walked around behind it, with the key on. And I said, well, I don't have any backup lights back there. So the connector, it just so happened, was leading from had a long pigtail connector, and it led from the neutral safety switch up here under the hood. And so I climbed up on the hood, up on my knees with my rear end up in the air, and I took that thing loose, and I said, I ought to be able to jumper these wires right here at the switch and see those backup lights come on. If I can do that, then I'll know I got a bad switch, you see. Well, somehow or another, when I jumpered them things, I found the starter. And that thing fired up, and it was in reverse, and I was under the hood, and it starts moving. Well, what you got to do if you can think quick enough is jerk spark plug wires. Getting shocked just a second there, you got to shut this thing down. That was pretty doggone scary. I mean, it didn't hit nothing, nobody got hurt, but wow! If I couldn't have shut that thing down, it would have backed into cars and banged my head against the hood and all that kind of stuff.
I was working on an '82 Chevrolet.
Yeah.
My boy brought in a little U-Haul truck and go take it mud ride. I put my foot under the dash to push the clutch in, and it started.
Yeah.
I don't know what it did.
Yeah.
It hit. It almost hit my brand new toolbox.
I had the flip slide one time. You can turn the key on or nothing. You just press the clutch and it started.
Yeah.
I didn't even get my foot all the way on the clutch there. I guess I kicked the wire and it said boom, boom. The light was under the hood.
That's bad news, man. That's the safety in the shop thing. Sometimes it seems like the cards are just stacked against you, And that one guy down there drove that old. I told you about that guy that worked that I had over there, and he was a little bit goofy, but he was working at that tire place over there, and he drove this '69 Camaro or something off of the lift into the front end machine. And but it was because the clutch and all was flopping around and loose, and he was having trouble getting it. And then, of course, I moved him from that place. I said, you need to leave there before, Perry chokes you or something. He didn't get fired for that, but I moved him away from there because I was afraid of what he might do over there because he really had a tendency to make mistakes. But what was funny was he put another guy on that lift that was an experienced front-end man, and about 2 weeks later, that guy drove a car off the lift into his brand-new front-end machine. That guy was an experienced guy that, I don't know what was going on over there. But I don't know. But I mean, that car can go and it's going to go off in there. But anyway.
I'm not bragging or anything, but I mean, how do you absolutely do that? I mean,
it jumps over the end,
Yeah, I can understand if it was rolling or something.
Or if you're pulling it up on there and it sort of loses traction and then grabs it and it shoots forward, it'll do that kind of thing too, But anyway, I never saw that happen in any shop where I worked, though.
But watch me do the other day.
I'll tell you what Jimmy Batchelor did, though. Jimmy Batchelor was saying about how he had they had a little rail out there where you come out of the showroom, and he was backing a brand new F-150 out there and knocked the doggone. Somehow he was looking at the other side because he was more worried about what was going on over there, and he knocked that rail over. And they just took the rail down there and put it up. He said, man, I haven't been working there a month. I just sure I was going to get fired, but they didn't do it too. One day, I was backing a car out of my stall, and my stall that I had, there was a gate. Coming through the gate, there was a place right here coming through the gate, and my service bay was right here. There's my two doors. And there was a place right there that was sort of, nobody was ever supposed to park over there. And I'm backing out, and I was almost backing out, and one of the truck mechanics is going through the gate, and he's got his big truck, and he almost runs over me. And I go, golly, I didn't even know he was coming. He actually went through the gate a little too fast. Well, I was worried about what else might be coming through that gate. And I was backing up, and I looked in my rearview mirror about the time to see that I was caving the door in on a Grand Marquis somebody had parked there. Well, nobody ever parked anything over there, but the guy from Ford Motor Credit come and parked his Grand Marquis over there, and I caved the door in. So what do you do when you cave the door in? You pull the truck back up into the shop, and you go get the service manager. I caved the door in on this car out here, and I was backing out. And he says, "Oh, that's all we need." He's rubbing his hands like that. But he went and got the Ford Motor Credit guy, and the body shop fixed it because we had a body shop. Wasn't a big deal, but every now and then, though, you're going to make a mistake. And one of the things
take the door in, why not keep backing up?
Yeah, well, that's just hard. That gives you this sinking feeling when you're looking in a rearview mirror about the time you see the door caving in on this brand new marquee. It's just bad news. But one of the things that you need to recognize is that, and I don't know how it is everywhere, but in Alabama, they cannot take mistakes that you make out of your paycheck. In other words,
They try to anyway.
Yeah, but if you pull it up on legal surfaces, there's actually Brandon Hickman. We told them about that over there at the dealership where he was working. They were talking about there was somebody that made a mistake, and he was talking about taking the money. There was a door handle he messed up or something. Wasn't much money, but they were taking out a paycheck. And he said that's against the law. You can't do that. And that made them mad because they had been used to being able to do that. And whenever he showed them legally that they were outside of the law doing that, you can fire the person that did it. There's nothing against that, but you can't take it out of their pay. All right.
Yeah, I used to have a boss that when I was like 16, he tried to make me do that, and I pulled up the legal papers, and he never tried anything like that again.
Yeah.
He started liking me a lot better.
Yeah. Technician A says speeding up the armature will result in increased amperage draw. Technician B says slowing the armature down will result in increased amperage draw. Both of them are typically right on that. I tell you, most of the starters nowadays have got a planetary gear set in them. You remember that? You notice that? Because the starter spins pretty fast, but it spins faster than the. It's actually a reduction drive to give it power, but they got to make a real fast motor to make that work. Technician A says increasing the amount of current flowing through a conductor will increase the strength of the magnetic field. That's true. Technician B says coiling a wire around a soft iron core will increase the strength of the magnetic field. That's true too. You put it around the iron core. And number 18. Technician A says the commutator is a series of conducting segments located around one end of the armature that come in contact with the brushes. You guys familiar with a commutator? I have a commutator. This motor here, this little piece of an electric power window motor, it operates on the same principle, and the little segments right around here that come in contact with the brushes, the windings have been taken off of this because I use that wire for something else. But that's the commutator. This is the armature right here, and that's a permanent magnet that was in the motor. On some of your older starters, there was a field coil that did the job that the permanent magnet does now. But that's a power window motor, and motors basically chase their tail anyway. You know how magnets run from one another whenever you try, and if you could force those brushes, cause those magnetic field to always be where it doesn't want to be, and that's what makes that motor run. Anybody that ever played around? I used to
tear them apart all the time.
Yep, have a fun time on that. Well, you could build an electric motor if you wanted to, but it wouldn't be all that strong unless you did it right. Okay, number 19. Which of the following? Number 18 is A actually. Number 19. Which of the following represents the correct sequence of steps that may need to be performed when testing a starting system? 19. Everybody got that? Visual inspection. First, you want to make sure everything's hooked up, right? If the battery cables have been disconnected, it's obviously not going to start. Next thing is battery condition. I'm telling you the right answer now.
Yeah, it's A.
And then starter draw, and then voltage drop. Starter draw has to be measured with what? An inductive current.
Oh, you talking about a snap-on thing?
Yeah. And they don't make that thing anymore, by the way.
They don't?
Nope. Snap-on nowadays, something I don't like is nowadays they're making these these charging system testers that are supposed to do the work for you. In other words, on that one it's all hands-on, and on the one they make nowadays you're supposed to push a button and step back and let it do all of the figuring. I never have it like that. And the ISG, how does current flow to make the system perform as a starter? C, through the stator windings, which generate magnetic fields in the rotor, causing the rotor to turn the crankshaft. Now then,